Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, Election Day in San Diego. Voters go to the polls to choose a replacement for disgraced former mayor Bob Filner.
I'm Amitha Sharma. President Obama wants insurance companies to extend their canceled policies. What will California's health exchange do about it? And San Diego water rates may be going up. We'll break down what it means for your budget.
Could a pill be the answer for problem drinking? We'll tell you what some San Diego researchers are learning. KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Voting is underway right now across San Diego this evening. People choosing a new mayor 3 months after the resignation of Bob Filner. Turnout is expected to be about 40% today. It's the highest number for a special election this year. Interest is high because of the sexual harassment scandal that forced Filner to resign.
Take one step closer to having a mayor who's going to stand up and fight for all.
It's a high-profile contest that's on the ballot, so we'll see a higher percentage overall compared to the other 4 special elections that we've conducted this year.
Now, some of the candidates were out earlier this morning to cast their ballots. The winner has to get more than 50% of the vote. Otherwise, it goes to a runoff between the top 2 vote getters.
We have an opportunity today to take one step closer to having a mayor who's going to stand up and fight for all San Diegans and move our city forward.
I can't wait for the polls to close tonight and us to keep moving forward and moving forward quickly.
I was at every single forum and debate that I was invited to. I was the only candidate to do that, and it's starting to look like people in San Diego are responding.
Our coverage of the results begins when the polls close at 8 tonight. Join Peggy Pico and her guests for the returns and analysis right here on KPBS television and simulcast on KPBS radio. You can also follow the returns and see all of our election coverage online at kpbs.org/election. San Diegans may soon be asked to vote on the Barrio Logan Community Plan. The registrar says a referendum to rescind the plan has qualified for the ballot. It's backed by the maritime industry and faces a legal challenge as well. A lawsuit claims signature gatherers made false claims about the plan during their petition drive. City Council will get the referendum at a future meeting, but there's another complication. A second petition drive is needed because the plan was passed in 2 parts. San Diego's interim mayor says the work at City Hall continues to move forward. Todd Gloria has spent the past 10 weeks looking at the inner workings of various departments. He says one of the major leftover issues from the Filner administration is providing funds to the tourism district to promote and market San Diego.
The city has come to an agreement with the TMD that will be presented to the council on Thursday. The agreement balances the need to protect the city by building a litigation reserve with the need to invest back into the market and to bring visitors to San Diego.
Gloria says the city hasn't seen a dip yet in occupancy tax charged to visitors at hotels, but he says the longer the marketing efforts are suspended, the more likely it will happen. He says that could affect the city's general fund and ability to fix roads and pay for other public services. Federal investigators raided an ambulance company in El Cajon this afternoon. They served a search warrant at Balboa Ambulance. FBI agents made no arrests at the facility, but didn't offer any more information. The court order for the search is sealed. A lawyer for Balboa Ambulance says the raid was not related to an immigration fine earlier this year. A judge says some UC hospital workers cannot stage a one-day strike tomorrow. The planned walkout involves 21,000 workers at UC San Diego Medical Center and 4 other UC hospitals. Their union says management was intimidating employees who went on strike last spring. Today's injunction only affects 49 workers who are considered critical to patient health and safety. Covered California will likely decide what to do about canceled insurance policies later this week. Amitha Sharma has more on the controversy.
California's health exchange is mulling over whether to endorse President Obama's plan to extend canceled health insurance policies for 1 million people in the state. Joining me to talk about that plan are Linda Keller, Executive Vice President of Intercare, and health insurance broker David White. Linda, consumers across the country are up in arms over their existing policies being canceled because they don't meet the standard under the new health care law. Give me some examples of what these existing policies lack.
Yes, so existing policies today don't have what is called essential health benefits. So as part of healthcare reform, there's a requirement that all policies offered under Covered California or the individual plans effective January 1 must have the 10 essential health benefits. And these include things like hospitalizations, ambulatory services, rehabilitative services, things like that. But they also include things like maternity care or pediatric services. And you might have a plan today that has annual limits or doesn't cover maternity or things like that. And going forward, effective January 1, those things must be covered in the plans.
And David, we also hear a lot that consumers whose policies are being canceled, when they go on the exchange to buy a policy, that they're getting a rate hike. How big of a problem is this?
The younger you are, the bigger the rate hike. So it's a major problem. I've been talking with a lot of my clients, and I have some of my clients that say they're not 26 anymore, so they can't be on their parents' plan, so they have to pay for it themselves. They've gotten 100 to 150% increases. The good thing is, on the other side, for once, the older people have been treated nicely, and older people have pre-existing conditions can probably get insurance for much less. So that there is benefits, but what's happened is we've really raised the price on the young a lot, and that's really a concern.
And so there's an interim remedy. President Obama is proposing that states extend existing policies for up to a year. But there seems to be a divide among California officials over whether this is wise. The state's insurance commissioner says the policies should be reinstated. Covered California says they'll come to a decision by the week's end, but they say having a risk pool is critical to the ongoing viability and that the out-of-state viability of exchanges. Elaborate more on this disagreement.
Yes, so one of the things you have to remember is that if the state says we are going to allow you to continue to have these old policies, that doesn't mean that the insurance carriers have to do it, right? So they'll go back to the carriers and say, you may allow the policy still, and the carriers will have to make a decision. But remember that when Covered California and the carriers priced the policies going forward, they were looking at the entire risk pool. They were basically saying everybody who's under an individual policy today is going to move over to these policies. We know that because these policies are all going to be canceled. In addition to these, we also have people who didn't get coverage before, that because they had pre-existing conditions or for whatever reason didn't get the coverage before, that are going to come into that risk pool. We know that that group that's moving in is probably a less healthy group. To David's point, if you had some healthcare issue and you needed to get coverage before but you couldn't, you're now going to be able to get it, which is a good thing. If the decision is made where they can keep the old policies, the people who will keep the old policies are more likely to be the younger, healthier population. So what you have is those folks staying on their old policies, and the people who are on the Covered California, the new policies, will be the older, maybe unhealthier population, and all these folks who came into the pool because they weren't able to get coverage before.
So if it's extended, then you have an upset in the balance.
Absolutely. This is a poor risk in this pool now, which is going to drive, that's not how they priced it, and it's going to drive up rates in the future.
But David, at the same time, President Obama promised folks that, look, if you like your current health care plans, you get to keep them. So there's a problem with not extending these existing policies.
Well, there is a problem, but one of the things that is really going on, it's all about politics. What's going on in Washington is all about politics, because what we need to do is move forward. And if we get stuck in this, I don't see how the insurance companies can do it. I don't see how they can just all of a sudden say, fine, we're going to do this. Because they've all agreed with Covered California inside contracts that they won't sell those policies. So there's a real disconnect here. I understand the president said something and he wants to cover himself. I can appreciate that, all right? Still, at the same time, I don't see how it's going to work. And I don't think California is going to accept it. I think they're going to be more like Washington. Oregon and Colorado are looking at the same thing. They have their own exchanges, and they're saying, no, I don't think we're going to do it. And I think what's going to happen is at the end of this week, they're going to say it's not really possible.
We have to close it there. David, Linda, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
JP Morgan Chase has agreed to a record-setting $13 billion settlement over mortgage-backed securities. The investments collapsed in value, you may recall, when the housing bubble burst. Nearly $300 million will go to California's public employee and teacher pension funds. They both lost money in those securities. The deal also includes money for customers. An independent monitor will oversee the process. County health officials say they're seeing a rise in whooping cough, not an epidemic at this point, but higher levels than last year. 6 new cases were reported at the county schools this week, bringing the total to 232 cases so far this year. There were just 162 last year. The county says all but one of the newly sick students were up to date on their vaccinations. There's an estimated 18 million problem drinkers in the U.S. Frequent heavy drinking takes a major toll on one's health as well as well-being. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg says there are different opinions on the best way to break dependence on alcohol, but new research shows a drug used to treat seizures can be an effective tool.
Kathy Selman is a go-getter.
Hi, Gina. This is Kathy. Hey, I just wanted to confirm that we're going to be meeting tomorrow to work on the content for our WINK presentation next week.
After years in real estate, Selman helped start a women's networking group. These days, Selman doesn't drink at all, not even socially. But for 7 years, she couldn't get through a day without having 4 glasses of wine.
Boy, it's a fog. A lot of it's a fog. You know, you go through regret, remorse, guilt, embarrassment. You're just so... You have no confidence. You lose your self-esteem. It was awful. Absolutely, it's devastating.
Selman has been married for 30 years and has 2 grown sons who are both entrepreneurs. She's tried a lot of different methods to quit drinking.
I had acupuncture, which was great and gave me some results. I tried natural supplements and herbs. I had very expensive counseling and therapy.
But what if there were a pill that could help heavy drinkers kick the habit? Addiction researcher Barbara Mason has just published a study that suggests the drug gabapentin could fit the bill. Gabapentin is FDA approved to control seizures in people who have epilepsy. For years, doctors have also prescribed it to treat alcohol dependence. But gabapentin hasn't been tested in a large, randomized clinical trial for that purpose, until now. Dr. Mason's study involved 150 longtime alcoholics who averaged 40 drinks a week. Half were given gabapentin, and half got a placebo. After 12 weeks, the rate of people who completely abstained from alcohol was 4 times higher for those taking gabapentin than those taking a placebo. What's more, those results were sustained for months after people stopped taking the drug.
And these effects are as large or larger than the FDA-approved treatments. But what's important is that gabapentin also had the beneficial effects on sleep and mood and craving. And it was found to be very safe and well tolerated.
Psychiatrist Krista Roybal directs the Scripps Drug and Alcohol Treatment Center. It's not affiliated with the Scripps Research Institute.
People decide to get sober. It's a huge accomplishment to make that decision. They go through detox, which may or may not be difficult, and then they're expecting to feel good.
But as Roybal explains, people in the early stages of recovery often suffer from sleeplessness, depression, and disabling anxiety. Those painful symptoms can make it hard for alcoholics to resist taking a drink. That's why she often prescribes gabapentin.
And what I say to patients with gabapentin is it'll just amp it down. It'll take the edge off. It's not a cure-all, but it really helps with the negative psychological effects.
But there is a school of thought that believes medical treatment for alcohol addiction isn't the best approach.
You're not bad people trying to get good. You know, we're sick people trying to get well. I don't know how long your history of drinking and using has been, but it takes a long time to undo it.
At the Fellowship Center in Escondido, Executive Director Paul Savo leads a discussion group. For more than 50 years, this program has helped thousands of men recover from addiction to alcohol and other drugs. The Fellowship Center is based on the principle that people in recovery are best helped by others who have gone through the process themselves. This so-called social model approach is based on the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. Savo says heavy drinkers don't generally respond well to medical treatment for their addiction, where a doctor or other provider is in charge of the recovery process.
They respond to a sense of understanding and connection. They respond to the fact that I'm an alcoholic talking with somebody who really understands where I came from, and they know what I've been through.
Men live together in sober housing at the Fellowship Center for an average of 5 months. Some stay as long as a year. They go through counseling, 12-step meetings, and a variety of skill-building activities. Over time, they learn how to function without having to rely on booze or other drugs. Savo says there's nothing necessarily wrong with the idea of taking a pill for a short time to help stabilize someone who's in recovery. But
unless it's lifelong, you know, it's only a small part of the recovery process. We instill these lifelong fundamental tools that allow a person to always fall back on certain things that they've done here that reduces anxiety, reduces stress, helps them get through the tough spots without resorting to alcohol or drugs.
To be sure, addiction researcher Barbara Mason says there are many pathways to recovery. She maintains her study shows gabapentin can be a big help. Mason concedes neither gabapentin nor any other medication on the market is a cure-all for people who have been drinking heavily for years.
You know, you just don't turn that ship around with a pill, you know, just a pill. In most cases, you really need to do work, and, you know, that's a personal part of the journey of recovery.
Kathy Selman was finally able to give up drinking 3 years ago when she went through a different clinical trial at the Scripps Research Institute. To this day, Selman doesn't know if she was given a drug or a placebo. Either way, she's glad she kicked her habit.
If I'd continued down that path, I don't know where I'd be today. It's a very sobering thought.
Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
A public hearing is set for this week over a proposal to raise water rates in the city of San Diego. Amitha Sharma is taking a closer look at the proposal.
San Diegans' water bills could be creeping up soon, nearly 15% over the next 2 years, and the public will get to weigh in at a city council meeting this week. Joining me are Brent Eidson with the City of San Diego Public Utilities Department and Donald Kelly with the Utility Consumers Action Network. Brent, break down this proposed rate hike for us. How much more will an average family, an average household in San Diego be paying if this rate hike passes?
Well, it's really difficult to tell you what the average family is. What we use in the Public Utilities Department for an average is really about 1,200 cubic feet per month of water. That's how we bill, 100 cubic feet. And so a customer who's using that amount of water, which is generally a family of 4 with a moderate-sized yard, their bills won't be increasing too significantly. We're estimating $2 to $3 per month.
Okay. And Donald, what about the Utility Consumers Action Network? What position is it taking on this proposed rate hike?
We're taking the position that we believe that the city is required to recover the costs of the pass-through costs from the County Water Authority, which is charging the city of San Diego more money to purchase their water. And so we understand that because they are paying more, the city of San Diego, or the city of San Diego and the city residents have to cover the costs for the excess cost for their purchases. What we are encouraged by with regards to this rate increase, we're never encouraged by the fact that rates are going up, but we're encouraged with the fact that the city of San Diego is finally agreeing to add a 4th tier to the water rate structure, which encourages conservation. One of the problems that the city of San Diego has had recently is that the fact that because we are purchasing water from the County Water Authority, their rates have spiked approximately 125% over the course of the last 4 to 5 years. And because we are paying so much more for their water, any water that we can actually save from city residents will actually encourage us and save us extra costs from not having to spend it to the water authority.
What are your hopes about how big of an incentive that will be?
Well, we anticipate this will be a great pricing signal to our customers, because what it does is it really lets them feel what it means to conserve. Right now, our existing tiers aren't very, there's only 3, and there's not a sharp break between them, and so it doesn't make a significant difference on your bill if you conserve a lot or not. This will actually be a steeper tier steeper break between the tiers. And like Dawn mentioned, there's a fourth tier, which is the lower tier, which will mean that a significant number of our customers could actually see a decrease starting January 1st, 2014, at least for the first year of this two-year rate increase.
But for now, it is being billed as a rate increase. What are you hearing from customers, or is anyone up in arms over this?
There are some of our members who are up in arms, but they're primarily up in arms because the cost of water being provided to the city of San Diego is increasing exponentially, and they don't like the fact that it's costing so much for us to buy that water. The Metropolitan Water District is a primary source of water for the San Diego County Water Authority, and the San Diego County Water Authority provides the water to the city of San Diego. And those costs have gone up substantially in the last 4 to 5 years. From 1996, there's a document put out by the city of San Diego. From 1996 until approximately 2007, 2008, the costs have stayed relatively flatlined. And then all of a sudden, in the last 4 to 5 years, they have spiked over 125%. And we are, in fact, our members are in fact upset that that seems to be the case. And it's my understanding from the city of San Diego that those costs are going to be going up even substantially higher over the next couple of years. One of the things that we are concerned about, however, with regards to this present rate increase and the present tier structure is that this fourth tier is in fact new for the city of San Diego. And one of my board members is extraordinarily concerned about the jump in water prices between the tiers. And so one of the things that you would hope would happen is that the city of San Diego would re-examine the billing pricing impacts on that fourth tier after the first year.
And do you expect that to happen?
We do. We will evaluate our pricing structure. As a matter of fact, we are already starting on our next cost of service study for fiscal year 2016. It's important that we understand what the impacts are to our fund and what the impacts are, more importantly, to our customers. And so that's all part of the evaluation we'll be doing.
Okay. Brent, Donald, thanks for coming on the program today.
Thank you very much for having me.
A UN study predicts acidity levels in the ocean will increase dramatically by the end of the century. KPBS reporter Susan Murphy spoke with a San Diego researcher about the changes occurring along our coast.
Oceans help modify climate change by absorbing about a quarter of human-caused carbon dioxide emissions from the atmosphere. But CO2 levels are rising and causing the ocean to warm and acidify at a rapid pace. Matthew Edwards is professor of biology at San Diego State University and a director of the Coastal and Marine Institute Laboratory. He's been studying the impact of acidification on kelp forest ecosystems for more than 20 years. He says some species of kelp thrive in elevated CO2 because they photosynthesize better in high carbon dioxide conditions.
However, we're also finding that the acidification side of things is also hurting them. So there's this kind of dual thing going on, and we're trying to figure out the balance between these two.
He says the overall outcome is a potentially dangerous reduction in biodiversity as kelp forests begin to change and thin out.
This is going to change how much habitat is out there, how much food is out there for other things to eat, and just the whole hunting nursery grounds for lots of things, all the way up to seals and lots of birds and otters and things like that.
Edwards and his graduate students dive for kelp samples off the San Diego coast every week to study in their lab. Edwards says it's an attempt to predict the future, one that's looking increasingly ominous.
As acidification continues, what's happening today is this is as good as it's going to get. Tomorrow is going to be slightly worse than today. The next day after that's going to be slightly worse than that.
Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
CNN will broadcast a documentary featured last weekend at the San Diego Asian Film Festival. Documented is the story of Jose Antonio Vargas, a journalist living in the U.S. illegally since he was 12. He grew up in California. CNN will broadcast the movie next spring. There are also plans for a theatrical release. Students in Chula Vista are working on a documentary to honor a former classmate and other victims of gun violence. KPBS education reporter Kylie Calvert tells us they've passed their goal in a little over 2 weeks to raise $18,000 to support the project.
A mural near the front door of High Tech High Chula Vista commemorates Sean Fuchs. He and his younger brother were shot to death in 2011 by their father, who then took his own life. 45 of Fuchs's former classmates are devoting this whole school year to an ambitious project.
We have several pieces we need to film today.
A documentary about what can be done to reduce gun violence.
You know, we all have our own personal connections to it, and we want to be able to look in depth of why it keeps happening and why no one is doing something about it.
The students are looking for answers other than gun control. They'll not only shoot and edit the film, they're also learning about branding, fundraising, public relations, and social media marketing. Matt Simon is a teacher working with the group. He came to High Tech High from another school affected by gun violence. He says the students want to visit communities across the country where students have been killed and come up with projects that can make a tangible difference.
Can they do any of this? I don't know. But I will say that, when we first told people what we were trying to do, raise $18,000 for this project, or possibly a lot more, almost everybody wrote us off.
Hey, Marvin. Thank you for your donation of $1,000.
This week, the students are celebrating reaching their $18,000 goal, but their fundraising campaign will continue through mid-December. Kyla Calvert, KPBS News.
We've got some rain in the forecast. Showers expected by Thursday. Until then, cloudy along the coast. Temperatures mostly in the 60s. Just a little cooler for the inland valleys. Nighttime temperatures there in the 50s. Mountain areas will drop into the 40s by the end of the week. The desert remains dry, but will get cooler as we head toward the weekend. Tonight's stories are online at kpbs.org/evening edition. And Peggy Pico will be here at 8 tonight when the polls close in San Diego's special mayoral election. Thanks for joining us. Good night.